thank you for jumping on the call. We're live with the Business of Coaching workshop, and really started this because at Turnkey Coach, we're a back-end, really operations solution based on a principle-based way of coaching to provide really high-value coaching for coaches that really care about actually coaching, which is, I think, what resonated with me so quickly with you. I met you at the Real Coaches Conference, and I think within 30 seconds, even though I knew you were getting up on stage to basically do a sales pitch, was embedded in the message. I could tell that your philosophy, your approach to things. I mean, just being part of the Real Coaches Conference, which to anybody listening, highly recommend. It's people who I've never been around so many people who really are just fully invested in coaching. So that right off the bat, certainly I knew everybody there was legit. But you spoke specifically to creating a systems-based approach to sales and marketing, and that you were genuinely invested in teaching people the principles behind the approach, as well as delivering some really actionable messages, which we can talk to in a bit. But just real quick, for those that aren't aware, I'll give you maybe, if we do like a 3-minute elevator. My brief intro to you is I actually thought you were professionally an email marketing expert who got into nutrition coaching. But as I understand now, you actually started out in fitness and nutrition coaching and kind of built your skills in email marketing into what is now the collective today. Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely. Yeah. I started as a personal trainer in person, doing small group training, one-on-one, then found that a lot of my clients, as we typically uncover, are struggling with nutrition as well. And that launched me into the nutrition coaching space. I worked for another company for about 3 years before I started my own business in 2018. So I started my own nutrition coaching company August 1st, 2018. I still run that today. So that's been something that is I'm in the trenches as
Right.
I teach marketing and everything else. I still have a pulse on what's happening in real time, and I enjoy that very much. And it's kind of was like my first real passion. So um, after running my business, I started from day one. I always call it like the happy accident of my business. From day one of starting my business, I didn't know really much about what was working on social media or how to run ads or how to do anything like that. So I just started emailing people, and I had a very small list. It was like I worked for another company, so I'd gathered up some relationships and had basically like a 50-person email list that I started with. And I started sending a daily newsletter. I don't know why I chose daily. It was just, this is what I'm going to do. And I stuck with it, and I haven't missed a day in the past 7 years. So that was, it's, if you do that many reps of something, hopefully you get better at it. So as I was doing daily emails and seeing traction very quickly, and people would respond and tell me how much my story resonated with them, and they would send the emails to friends and family. And I was getting a lot of clients that way. And that was really what launched me into wanting to understand why it was working. Like clearly I was onto something, but I didn't actually understand any of the principles behind it. So I kept refining the skill set and actually then putting a framework and kind of a system behind it as more coaches started to notice. I mean, I grew my nutrition coaching business from zero to 7 figures. I hit my first 7-figure year on year 3. So we went from 500K to 750K to 1.2 million from there. So it was a lot of coaches that I just friendly with and colleagues with. They were like, "How are you doing this?" And when I said
Mhm.
email, they would always be like, "There's no way." Like nobody believed that email was working. And so I was like, "All right, I should probably make this more of a buttoned up actual system and teach other people how to use it." I started doing some copywriting, ghostwriting for people, and building out sales pages and email sequences and all of that stuff. And then eventually ended up launching the collective in 2024, which was basically taking all of the systems and frameworks and templates and resources that I've accumulated over 7 years of doing this and put it into kind of a one-stop shop where you can plug and play everything that's been proven and tested over a long period of time.
That's awesome that you're still in the trenches. How many clients are you still managing while also running? the business?
Yeah, we average around 300 active
Wow.
that we manage. Yeah. So at our peak, I think we were at like 500. And then I've intentionally scaled. I had like the full blown setting team, sales team, all doing the whole thing. And it was just a lot to manage with both
Hmm.
things. So I kind of scaled that back. And I've got it in a good place now where I've got my core team that have been with me for a long time. And I trust them and they can kind of run the fulfillment side of things while I still handle the marketing and sales and then do the business coaching and the collective and put a lot of my time and energy on that side of things.
I love that. I mean, it's really Turnkey Coach kind of evolved from a back end perspective from the same way. We're strength and conditioning coaches, and we needed a solution and built have been building our own solution basically as we're figuring it out and now trying to. And it was like 3 years ago people started asking if they could use it. I'm like, well, I guess yeah, we could try to figure out how to make that work. But I think it makes such a difference when a product is designed and operated by people that are actually doing the work that it's intended for as well. It has a totally different feel behind it than something that's just venture capital backed and kind of slapped together to get a quick buck.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree.
On that daily emailing, is that like Seth Godin influence, or have you heard his philosophy on that? That everybody should be doing this, basically.
Yeah, I know. I've read whatever his first book was. I read. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but I'm familiar with his work. I didn't really
It
follow him as kind of like
was just like intuitive. He started doing
yeah,
it.
I didn't have a blueprint, honestly. There was
Yeah.
nobody that I could say. I mean, now I have mentors that I, work with and everything, but when I first started, it was just all I knew was just share my experience because I had been through what a lot of my clients were struggling with. So it was just
Hmm.
telling my story and sharing a lot of the struggles that I had been through and how I overcame them and what I was working on. And it was just kind of giving people a real, daily glimpse into my life and my struggle. And they'd be like, I feel heard. I feel seen. It's like somebody finally gets it. And that connection and that trust is what ultimately led to them reaching out about coaching. And now more than ever, that holds true. Like we trust is at an all-time low right now, and skepticism is at an all-time high right now. And I think it's valid. I think it's rightfully so because there's so many big promises being made that under deliver. And especially when we talk about like, business coaching and marketing, it just seems like everybody's making crazier claims and trying to kind of lean on that instant gratification society that we live in. And so now more than ever, that human to human connection and that trust building is more important. And that's kind of what my whole philosophy is when it comes to standing out and separating yourself as a coach in a crowded space. Like be the person that actually shows your audience that you can solve their problems and don't hold anything back. And we've been told for so long, don't tell them how they, to get the results because then they'll just go do it and they won't need you. And I feel the complete opposite. Like, let me tell them all of the ways that they can solve their problems. Let me show them that I can help them solve their problems. And if they can do it on their own, amazing. Then I got somebody the result that they want, which is a win. And if they need help implementing, then that's when they would come and work with me. So that I completely everything changed for me really. It was like January of 2021 where I just got sick of all of like the traditional marketing tactics that were being taught to me. And I was just like, I'm going to tell people everything. I'm going to hold nothing back. I'm going to tell them how we do what we do, how our program works, the price point, which everybody's I'm like, oh my God, you should never tell people your price. I tell them everything, tell them how it works, who it's for, who it's not for, like all the steps of the process, everything that is going to happen in our program. So that way, by the time they reach out, they're so pre-sold and they already have that understanding. It's more of a formality of, okay, how do I get started than anything else.
So that touches on one of the. I'll add that to the two most common questions I get. How do I get more clients, and how much should I charge? Interestingly, as a back end solution, fulfillment solution with Turnkey Coach, the first question that comes up are those two. While we're telling them, well, here's how you can deliver your coaching. They're like, okay, cool. How do I get more clients? But the third most common is probably, I know I need to be putting content out. It's like pulling teeth. These are coaches. They like working with people, but then you put them in front of a phone to create content or sit them down to write an article, and they feel like everything's been said.
Yeah.
Nothing's new. I feel like I'm just forcing content out there. It doesn't feel real. How do you help people deal with that third question of just like, I just doesn't feel, and it also feel, I don't know if it's like a slow burn thing, but they don't feel like they're getting anything back from it, which is maybe a signal that it's not good content. But how do you help people solve that aspect of the equation?
Yeah. So typically what's happening when people feel like they're blending in, when nobody's responding, when they're just, I'm putting in all this time and not getting any traction on social, my content's not getting me new clients. Oftentimes what's happening is they're speaking too broad. So they are saying the same things as everybody else. When they're like, nothing new can be said here, it's because everybody is speaking to the same broad facing problems. Like if I only talked about like how to scale your business, there's millions of coaches who are saying how to scale your business. That's way too broad of a problem. That's going to
Mm,
sound like everybody else. If I say how to lose fat and build muscle, I'm going to sound like everybody else. If I say, how to improve your deadlift, it still sounds like a lot of people. Like they're too
mhm,
broad. What we want to do is we want to start broad and then we want to narrow in on these micro problems and situations that come up that only our ideal clients experience. And it requires some work on the front end, which means you actually have to know who you work with, who gets the best results, like who do you enjoy working with the most, who gets the best results with you, and what qualities do they have that allow them to get the best results. So I have this exercise called the floor and the ceiling exercise, and basically you identify the floor is the minimum requirements that somebody needs to bring to the table in order to be a good fit to work with you.
mm,
So for example, with our nutrition coaching business, you have to have some prior knowledge to tracking macros or nutrition in general. Like you can't just be brand new and have no idea what a macro is.
mm,
Otherwise, you're not qualified to work with us. And I can point them in the right direction and I can openly say, hey, we require this. I'm going to send you a referral to somebody who can get you started. And then, when you kind of graduate from that first step, you can come join us. So that's the bare minimum. You got to know a little bit about nutrition. You don't have to have experience tracking. You just have to know what it is. And you also have to have some kind of a workout routine in place. Even if you're inconsistent, there has to be some evidence that you can get to the gym with some relative consistency or work out from home or wherever. So we typically work with more intermediate to advanced clients. That's our bare minimum. So you got to identify like what's the bare minimum that somebody brings to the table. And then your ceiling clients are like, what are the qualities that make them just absolutely thrive because they already have these things in place. For example, they're already tracking macros and they're already working out 4 to 5 days per week. We can take that person and we know that, a few tweaks to their plan, some minor changes will go a long way, but they've already got the habits in place that allow us to just make a couple minor adjustments and let them thrive. So we know our floor, we know our ceiling, and we're not going to talk to anybody below the floor. We're not going to talk to anybody above the ceiling. We're going to talk in that wheelhouse between the floor and the ceiling. And what you want to do is you want to identify the small little micro problems, not the broad sweeping problems, but the little micro problems that show up on a day to day basis. And think about how quickly it's like a litmus test. Is it a micro problem? How quickly can you solve the problem?
mm,
I can't help somebody lose 30 pounds of body fat in a week. So it's too broad. Like if I can solve the problem in a short period of time, like days or a week, that's a micro problem. If it's going to take me months or years, it's probably too macro. It's probably too
mm,
broad and it's going to sound like every other coach. 3 steps to improve fat loss, 3 steps to build muscle. Like everybody's saying the
mhm,
same thing. But if you go very narrow and you go, I'm going to help you stop binging at night with, a 3 step solution, or every time you get home from work and you're stressed out, you go raid the pantry. I'm going to show you how to fix that. Those are micro problems that now all of a sudden they don't feel like they're just kind of part of the crowd. It's like you're laser focused on, oh, this person's talking directly to me, and you're actually giving them a solution. Then once you solve that micro problem, you can zoom out and show them the bridge from micro to macro. So if we stop the weekend binging, if we stop the, raiding the pantry after a stressful day at work, your consistency is going to improve. And over time, you're going to be able to lose the 30 pounds in 6 to 12 months. And we can give them a realistic timeline, but we capture the attention by something that's so specific where, we almost intercept that dialogue that's happening in their head. And the situation, like the best content is when somebody is like, that just happened to me. So like I have a
Mm.
coach that I work with who helps like, corporate men who have busy careers and they high stress jobs and everything, and was talking, if you're a corporate man, if you're a businessman and you're struggling with your body composition and was getting no traction, I was like, let's do this. Talk about how you help them with their corporate lunch. Like, be so
Mm.
specific that the next time you're at a corporate lunch and you don't know what to eat, here's how to fix that. And immediately got a response. It was like, I literally just had a corporate lunch 2 days ago and I completely blew my nutrition out of the water. I need your help. It was like, now that we nailed the actual specific situation, and the person was like, oh my God, is he talking to me? Because it was
Hmm.
so specific. And the guy was like, this just happened to me. That's how you know you're on the right track, that you can cut through the noise of sounding like everybody else when you can be that specific and talk to a micro problem or a situation that literally just happened to your client. So it's the front end work is identify what they bring, like what qualities, the floor and the ceiling, what micro problems exist in that wheelhouse, and that's your whole content strategy. Solve them, speak to those problems in those situations, and give them the solution, and then help them see the bridge from micro to macro so they can still picture the destination of the ultimate goal.
So if applying that then to what is a macro problem, how do I get more clients? How do you help people break that down into micro problems?
Yeah, so the how do I get more clients is a macro. What we just talked about
Right.
of I don't know what to say, that's a
Yeah.
version like
Yeah.
hey, get more micro, that's a version of a micro problem, because fixing your messaging is part of the solution to then getting more clients. And then, we can talk about, you know, what it looks like to generate conversations to then, and then we can go to another micro problem, which is how do I get more conversations? How do I get more conversations to lead to sales calls? How do I get more sales calls to convert to clients? So like every macro problem is going to have these little micro problems that lead up to the big macro solution. So you got to fix your messaging. We have to have a process for delivering that message consistently. And we have to be able, if we're just talking organic, because I basically teach a 3 layered approach. It's email, organic, and ads. And you don't need all three to work together. You could just do one. You could just focus on organic and be fine. You could just focus on email and be fine. You could just focus on ads and be fine. Or you can combine two or three and have kind of a pretty robust system for lead generation. But if it's just organic, then we have to have these little touch points along the way that get people to raise their hand and allow you to reach out and start a conversation, because that's the fastest path to new clients. Conversations are the fastest path to conversion. And
Hmm.
it allows you to build trust faster than any piece of content ever could, because I can have a real human to human interaction with you and show you that I know what you're facing. I know what problems you're facing. I have the solution and I can give you real value. I can say, well, you know what? Like, send me the list of what was at your last corporate lunch, or what was all the food that was served. Do you have that handy? Do you have the menu? Do you have whatever? Just send me a list, and then I can go and record a Loom video and be like, all right, Andrew, so I'm looking at this, and I see like the pasta obviously sounds delicious, but for your goals, what would have been great is they had this chicken breast over here. You could have just taken the rice, the chicken breast. It looks like there was like a salad. Build yourself a salad. You've got the carbs, whatever. And I can explain like, hey, that's a really balanced plate, because we start with protein first, then we make sure that you've got the carbs, we've got some, veggies on your plate. And, as you start to understand like what a balanced meal looks like, this will become easier and easier. But I just wanted to give you a quick audit, since you just had this problem. This is what would have been a great choice, but one of the most important things is that you don't beat yourself up. It was just one luncheon. The next one, you'll have a better framework to be able to build a plate that works with your goals. And if you need help with anything in the future, just hit me up. I'm happy to give you any feedback that you need. And now you've been more helpful than any person that they've ever even paid. Like nobody's going to go to that length. We treat them as if they're paying us already, show
Hmm.
that we can solve their problems. And then we kind of highlight that there may be another problem that they need help with. Like, hey, let your, outside of your corporate lunches, what are you doing at home? Are you meal prepping? What do you have ready to go? Would it be worth jumping on a 15-minute call and I can build out kind of a personalized roadmap for you to help you with this goal? Would that be worth your time? And now we can transition them to a sales call. But as we're getting into the micro problem solution content strategy, we have to be able to integrate opportunities for people to raise their hand so there's a number of ways to do that. We have resources that we can offer that should help them with a solution. And basically, it's like, I put together this quick cheat sheet on what to order at your next corporate lunch. If you're interested, let me know. I can send you a copy for free. And then people say, yes, I would love that. And then we start a conversation. We can put up polls on our stories that say, if you're struggling with XYZ thing, or which do you struggle with more, this or this? And somebody votes, and then we can start a conversation. So we have to have a weekly cadence that's consistent where we're testing things to see what your audience responds to. And we have conversations happening every single week. Then we can showcase that we know how to solve their problems. We can be human, we can build trust, and we can transition to a call. And that's just on the organic side. Then we want to be nurturing and building trust through email. And then, ads is a whole other opportunity that you can do some low budget ads to get clients and leads. But if we're just talking like beginners, organic and email is where I would start.
Awesome. Do you find that different personality types, or do you always steer people to start with organic, or does it depend on kind of the
Yeah, some people
individual case?
like writing more than anything else. And they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, that doesn't bother me. I can write. Great. We can start with email.
Mm,
Um, but the nice part about organic is you do get very fast feedback.
mm,
So because you can create a cadence that's a little bit more frequent, and it's just like faster data to see
hmm.
what's resonating with each individual audience and what type of content is performing well, what messaging, and positioning is working well. So it does allow for faster data and feedback, which is why I
Hmm.
typically like to start with that. And then we can take some of those winners and start to use them in the email strategy and the ad strategy because we've already tested what messaging is going to work.
Do you have a platform that you prefer or steer people towards, or is that kind of like a personal preference thing
Organic, it seems like Facebook and Instagram are the easiest places to
to
start.
get started? Mm.
Um, yeah, I mean, you can go TikTok, you can go LinkedIn. There's plenty of opportunities on both, but for me, if somebody's like pretty new and they don't really know where to start, I'll just steer them towards Facebook and Instagram.
Mm. Is there a point in your coaching conversations with clients that you steer them to focus more on fulfillment? So I've been noticing, for example, there's a lot of people asking, how do I get more clients? Not as many people asking, how do I cut my churn in half?
Yeah.
Like, do you ever get somebody that's got like 10, 15% churn and you're like, I think you might need to work on your service first before you work on the sales and marketing side?
Yeah, completely. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's like one of the things that if if I'm working with a client as a business mentor, I want to make sure first and foremost that the delivery and fulfillment is in place.
Mm.
And that's because it's such low hanging fruit. Before we talk about anything, it's kind of like the leaky bucket. Why are we pouring more water into a bucket that's got a giant hole in it? It doesn't make sense for us to, turn the faucet and put more pressure on, in there. It's not going to fill the bucket up any faster. We got to plug the hole first. So
Right.
that's where the first thing that I would do is before anybody comes to work with me, I always want to make sure that delivery and fulfillment is in a good place because again, we can't turn up the heat on lead generation if everybody is leaving after, a month or two.
Right. At what kind of metrics do you look at for fulfillment performance?
Yeah, I look at like re-sign churn rate, things like
Mm.
that.
Yeah.
And then also like their confidence. Sometimes it's pretty easy just with a quick conversation to see how a coach feels about their fulfillment. A lot of times there's, uncertainty and I don't know if
Mm.
I'm providing, good enough service. I don't know if, all that stuff. So they have data, great. if not, if they're, just getting started out, it's just a conversation. And you can usually tell pretty quickly if a coach feels like, this program is amazing and it way exceeds the promise or the expectation, or if they're like, yeah, I'm not sure if I'm doing this right, then we probably need to have a fulfillment conversation.
What are some of the bigger hurdles you see? So let's say somebody signs up, like in full transparency, I am also a member of the collective, starting to work on that process myself. What do you see as the biggest obstacles or points of resistance as people are going through the material or the course that um, they get hung up, once they're actually bought into the idea of creating content regularly, building out those three different strategy channels.
Yep. So there's three sins that I call them the three deadly sins. Um, Dull, delusional, distracted. So it's pretty self-explanatory, but each one, kind of manifests itself differently. Um, Delusional means you kind of think you know everything, but you're not, you kind of aren't open to new ideas or concepts. It's just like, no, I've already got this. I don't need to worry about email, or like, I already know everything here. I don't need to pay attention to this. Dull is you keep showing up, you watch the trainings, but you don't implement anything. So the person who's dull is like, oh, I could tell you everything there is to know about the collective, email system. I could tell you everything you need to know about the organic strategy. I could tell you everything about the ads ecosystem. Okay, what have you done to implement? Nothing.
Hmm.
So they can
Hmm.
regurgitate the info. They just don't take action. And then distracted is, I'm going to start on this, but oh, there's a course over here. Oh, there's a shiny object over here. Oh, there's this other thing. Oh, should I be focused on like this LinkedIn ads? Should I be focused on Google ads? And those are the three deadly sins. You're either dull, delusional, or distracted. And that's the biggest hurdle that we try to help people stay. And the way that it's laid out is I try to make everything step by step by step. Like, don't move on until you complete this step. This is step one, do this first. This is step two, do this next, and just follow along. But even with that, it's human nature to get shiny object syndrome. And
Hmm.
there's, like I said, there's all these bold promises being made all over the place. It's like, oh, this person told me he could get me 50 clients overnight, so I'm going to see what this is all about. And we end up, distracting ourselves, or we watch all the trainings, we show up to all the calls, but we don't actually take action on things. And we're like, I don't know if this is working. It's like, we haven't actually done anything about it. So,
Hmm.
those are the things we try to make sure that people are doing what we're teaching and implementing, and then getting feedback based off of real data. So I always say that it shouldn't be if X, then Y, because that's theoretical. It should be, I did X and Y happened. Now I have actual data. What should I do next?
Hmm. One of the things that stood out during the presentation at the Real Coaches Conference is that you talked about the system, the sales and marketing system having it wasn't automation, but predictability, I think was the word that you used, just as much as we think about the back end. So, I come from a manufacturing process or a background where there's very much a system into fulfillment, essentially, which is carried over into turnkey coach as well. But sales and marketing for most people, and I feel this way as well, even on our business side, is this sort of we've yet to hit exactly that feeling you were just describing, actually, where input X and we get Y out. Even though we've got a lot of action happening, that Y is there's no relationship, there's no function to it. So I'm curious when when you hit that tipping point where it feels more predictable. I assume there's still a consistent also amount of work. It's not just like a cash machine, right? How
Never.
much time do you coach people to think about fulfillment versus lead gen, sales and marketing when you're running a business? A lot of our coaches are solopreneurs, and they're already coming from a point of feeling like they're maxed out, or
Yep.
they're in the gym all day, or in the gym and on the computer all day. So the idea of having to carve out more time to do one or the other just seems it's already a huge challenge that we're trying to help people with. But I guess what I'm wondering is how to think about managing your time between the two, and how you coach people to do that, and what it looks like day to day to balance fulfillment and sales and marketing.
Yeah, so it's a good question. I think ultimately it starts with what do you want as a coach, as a
Mm,
solopreneur, as a trainer? What are we working towards? And I think so many times like we fail to answer that question because we just have this arbitrary goal that then we keep pushing it like, oh, well, I want to hit 10K a month. Okay, well, then what? You're going to hit 10K a month, and then what's next? You're going to be, we don't actually have a real kind of benchmark that we're looking for with a real purpose behind it. Like I want to be able to take my family on a trip every year and I want to be able to pay my bills and live comfortably and I want XYZ thing and there's an actual number associated with that. Now we're moving in the right direction and then we can start to put parameter. What does that look like from a client roster perspective, from a team perspective? And sometimes a lot of coaches that I work with were just in like scale mode just because they thought that's what they were supposed to do. They would hire way too quickly. They would have a team and then they're like, well, I don't actually want to manage a team and didn't
hmm
actually set up like what are we working towards? So now, that's the first thing that I do. I have coaches that I work with that were just like, I want a roster of 50. I don't want to hire anybody. It's just me. Like, let's max that out. I'll start a wait list. And that's exactly what we did. All right, now we know what the North Star is. So we can, build the system to create that roster of 50 with a wait list. And when people drop off, you email your wait list, you fill the spots, and it's pretty hands off at that point. But some
mm,
people want to scale. I've coaches that have scaled to $250,000 months, and that it looks very different than the coach that just wants to be a solopreneur managing a roster. So when it comes to time allocation, it's I look at as rather than throwing new resources at something, first let's look at what resources are being wasted.
hmm
It's like, well, I want $5. Well, maybe we should pick up the like, change that you dropped on the floor first instead of just trying to find the next $5. So we look at that first is where are you spending your time? Where are you spending your money? And let's recapture some of the things that are being wasted first before we start throwing new things, oh, let's spend more time on this. Well, what about the time that's being wasted when you're like scrolling Instagram trying to find like content inspiration, or the time that's being
mm,
wasted where you're trying to create graphics in Canva that you don't really need to be worrying about. So let's recapture that first and see where we can allocate it. Even in fulfillment, there's a lot of times that the fulfillment process might be inefficient. I know that like you guys can help with efficiency and fulfillment.
yep.
So if somebody is wasting a lot of time on fulfillment, can we recapture that time and allocate it elsewhere? Same thing with finances too. One of the first things that we do, it's one of the first modules in the collective actually, is called recapture and reallocate, which is there any money that's being wasted right now that you can recapture and reallocate to something that will actually move you forward, like
Mm.
prescriptions that you forgot about, or fees that you don't need to be paying somewhere, anywhere that we can kind of recapture some of those resources and deploy them so they'll actually help move you in the direction that you want to go. So that's the first thing, is just auditing what exists right now and seeing
hmm
if there's any room for more time on marketing, or fulfillment, depending on what the individual situation is, or financial. And then it's understanding what are we working towards, and what's that going to look like from a time commitment. A lot of times coaches are afraid of saying, we have a coach right now that we're working with. He was like, I just want to work 20 hours a week. And
hmm
that was part of the North Star. It was like, I want to make $15,000 a month, but I want to do it working 20 hours a week. And we just reverse engineered that. We started with
hmm
that goal in mind, and we kind of reverse engineered what that would look like and how that would work. And he's there. And that was just, we knew what we were working towards so we could build the systems around that. And I think sometimes we fail to define that clearly enough. So it does feel like we're just always chasing more time and money.
what does it look like for somebody that wants to do 20 hours a week and a 15K month,
Yeah,
out of curiosity?
his process is really simple. He does ads, organic, and email, but it's his daily tasks. So he has his fulfillment days where he does client check-ins, which I believe he does Mondays and Tuesdays.
Mm-hmm.
He does like a content schedule that is all generated around messenger conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes him maybe an hour per week. So it's like
Wow.
one day of batching his content. That works for some people, but not for others. But for him, He's good
Mhm.
on video. He can get his videos done in like an hour and have the whole week's worth. Um, and then so he allocates a certain amount of time and things like 30 minutes to an hour per day for messenger conversations. He's got his like
Okay.
1 hour a week for batching content. He's got his fulfillment days on Mondays and Tuesdays. And then he just sets his schedule around sales calls based off of the remaining availability through the week. And he doesn't waver on that. It's like he has a hard stop time. He has a, when he starts, and honestly, the most recently, he's been like, hey, my new complaint is I don't know what to do with my time now. Like, go take your wife out, like go whatever you want, have date nights.
Yeah.
He gets to go to the gym when he wants to and things like that. He's just like, now I'm feeling a little bit bored. Well, all right, well, we could add more work if you want to, but this was what you wanted. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
That is a good problem to have. Hope to get to that point in my life sometime. Although, if that's what I really want, the quote I just read from you this morning is that intelligence is the ability to get what you want. So if I say that, I better I better deliver. Otherwise, I'm not being very intelligent. Man, awesome. We are actually a little bit over time, but I wanted to give you a chance, just kind of open platform. If there was anything that we missed or that you want to make sure and plug or just share with people that are watching about the collective, or
Yeah.
um, go
Yeah,
for it.
this whole thing, it's simple. It's not easy. Just same thing with, fitness and nutrition. It's very simple. It's just not easy because it is actually boring. It's just we make it more complicated because we think it has to be.
Hmm.
And so a lot of times we just have too many moving parts and it's hard to be reliable. It's hard to be consistent when there's so many moving parts. And so a lot of times what it is, it's stripping away things that aren't serving you. It's focusing on the few big rocks that actually move you forward. And the more pieces that have to go right in order for you to get the outcome that you want, the less reliable that system is. And we want fewer
Hmm.
parts and optimize those fewer parts than having 10 things that you're doing and you're kind of half-assing all 10 things and you're wondering why there's no predictability in your lead generation or your sales process, your fulfillment. Well, it's too complicated. The system is too complicated. Let's strip a bunch of that stuff away. There really should only be like 3 to 4 things that you're focusing on and just optimize those things. And I mean, this is what we do in the collective. We try to simplify, we try to provide as many resources as we possibly can. Um, I think it's the best program for coaches, period. Like gym owners, trainers, coaches. We have holistic practitioners in there. We have doctors. We have, gyms. We have pretty much anybody in the health and wellness space can get a lot of value out of it. We offer a 7-day free trial for anybody that's interested. It's thecollective.inc. And you can go in, you can see for yourself, take a look around. If it's not for you, you can cancel. You don't have to pay anything. So the free trial is just a way to let everybody kind of see the inside. You could go in there and take everything that we have and run and not pay us, and that's totally fine.
That's awesome. I love it. I mean, we all the time, our tagline for Barbell Logic is simple, hard, effective. So it sounds like right up the same alley. So many comparisons to or strength training, strength and nutrition training. But Mike, I really appreciate it. Thank you for taking time out of your day, and hope the collective continues to grow and that we see you again sometime.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.